Yeah, fire away.
My name is Sara Hawthorne. I'm a systems approach Vedic astrologer based in Sarasota, Florida. And I'm a consultant, educator, all things Vedic astrology. So I became interested in Vedic astrology when I was really young through my own father, David Hawthorne, who also studies astrology and practices. So even before I was born, he was involved in this knowledge. So it's been passed down generationally, which is really cool. And I can always remember my dad telling me when I would be going through a particularly rough period of time, whether it was like a breakup with a boyfriend or some, weird accident. And he would always know exactly when things would get better. And I was just thinking, how cool is that as a parent that someone was able to tell that kind of information? After about 3 years of studying, I was conferred the honorary title of Jyotish Saraswati by the Systems Institute of Hindu Astrology and by my professor, my father's professor as well, V.K. Chowdhury of Gurgaon, India. So now I do this as well as my dad. We specialize in helping people with career, relationship, health advice.
Very cool. Family business.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting what you said, when you were younger and you were going through something difficult and your dad could just look at your astrology and tell you what was going on, like why you were going through what you were going through. How was that helpful for you when you were going through that?
In some ways it was annoying, A parent always wants to offer their advice as much as possible in all realms. And when you have an added element of uh, this information, it can be a little bit all consuming. It can be fatalistic or make you a little bit paranoid of what could be. But it was also very helpful in that he was able to emotionally support me in a way that most parents aren't able to. And he was always able to just sit down and say, look, this is what's going on. This is how long it's going to last. And focus on your remedies, get on a spiritual path, focus on meditation, do charity for others, above all, be helpful to others, because when we are involved in our own problems all the time, it's all we can see. And if we step outside of that and we say, I'm going to focus on other people instead of myself, I think you have an uplift in your mental health and all aspects of life.
Yeah, I'm thinking for me, it's like I can really get wrapped up in my emotions and then I'll react to that. So I imagine if I had a dad and I was going through something or a mom and I was going through something as a kid and they could say, well, here, you're having this influence, you're going to feel this way. That would bring me some equanimity. So I could just kind of like go with the flow a little bit more, not thrash around.
Yeah, definitely shedding light on potential areas so that you can navigate them better. You're not feeling like you're being blindsided or you're, yeah, like you said, thrashed about by life. My dad always says, when we know what's in the horoscope, then we have the ability to have smoother sailing in life. We just glide along the surface more easily.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to talk about that a little bit. The the polarities between and using the river as the metaphor, as we're like going down the stream of our life, and as we go down that river, sometimes it's smooth, sometimes there's a bunch of rocks, and it's very tumultuous. Level 5 rapids, and and when do you go with the flow? When do you paddle hard? And and to what degree does the paddling matter? So I'm really interested in that whole polarity or the dilemma or dialectic between those two, and I think we'll get into that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, first question. So just kind of the basics, right? I have a basic understanding of astrology, just being around it for years and years. But I actually don't really know how it all really breaks down, how it all really works. So, yeah, the first question is, how do the planets and stars influence us, right? Because it's a little bit out there, right? So you're telling me, these stars up in the heavens, somehow Jupiter, somehow Mars is affecting how I wake up and feel today, or what happens when I get in the car today. So how is it that they actually exert influence on our lives?
The planets and the stars, the belief is that they have a very subtle impact on us, very subtle influence. And that belief is that they can affect, of course, our moods, our behaviors, overall experiences in our lifetime. And the divine science of Vedic astrology is based on karma theory and the belief that the positions and the movements of the planets and stars affect our lives. So the planets can influence the timing of important events, such as marriage, launching businesses, the birth of children, even our death. And we can see things like our overall health due to the influences in a person's birth chart. And we can use astrology to help make decisions and plan for the future. And as I mentioned earlier, the basis of astrology is karma theory. So whatever karma we have to face in this life is based on the planetary influences arising in our horoscopes. So the horoscope is a map of the heavens, the planets, and they're plotted on a paper or a chart. Then there's 12 signs of the zodiac, and there's 12 numbered houses. So from this map of the heavens, we can read the planetary influences on human beings. So both things like happiness and suffering are considered to be results of the planetary influences that are in that birth chart. And this is based on our deeds, our past life karma. So the strong planets in the birth chart represent our good karma or good deeds of past lives. And they bless us with things like success in matters of health, education, profession, finance, relationships, and our spiritual progress. And then the weak or afflicted planets represent our bad karma. And that can, in our lifetime, this lifetime, cause setbacks, delays, disappointments, make us vulnerable to all kinds of challenges due to natal or transit afflictions.
What is natal and transit?
Yeah, so natal is what's in the birth chart. So where the planets were at the exact time, place, and date of your birth. And we're using the sidereal zodiac, which is used by Vedic astrologers. The tropical zodiac is what is used by Western astrologers. And that's based on a fixed position of the planets over 2,000 years ago, whereas sidereal zodiac has been updated to where the position of the planets are today, which is tracking the transit of planets. So if you were to ask an astronomer at the time of your birth what constellation was ascending, they would agree with the Vedic astrologer, and they would say this is what the natal chart would look like because these planets were in these signs at that time. And then the transit information is seen by mapping where the planets are actually in the sky today in reference to where they were when you were born.
So if I understand right, that like the natal chart is kind of like looking at the big picture. So when you're born, here's the big picture. Here's kind of the clothes you're wearing when you come in, right? It's that's probably not a great analogy. It's not a great analogy, but it's like right. So it's kind of like here's your makeup. This is you. This is kind of the template of you, and then the transits is like as you go along the way, those influences they shift around. Some days you're feeling happy, some days you're feeling down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always tell people, yeah, the birth chart is so interesting to know. People always say, well, I know this about myself, right? But it is really who we are fundamentally deep down inside before all of the influence of the people around us, the situations that have made us into who we are. It's kind of underneath all of that. What's our hidden potential? What's our underlying operating how should we be without all the noise and the clutter of people around us telling us how we should be or our upbringing? And of course those things are seen in the chart too, whether we had nurturing parents or whether we had abusive home life. These are all situations that make us who we are, but it really is kind of fundamentally what your potential is beneath all of that. And then And then the experiences we have, of course, shape further. And those experiences could be due to, or at least seeing, whether it's the planets creating the situation or whether we're just seeing the situation, is a whole other conversation. But that can be seen through things like the sub period, the main period, which is the dasha period a person is going through. This gives general information regarding what kind of experiences they may have, whether it's good or bad experiences, and then things like transit influence as well.
So continuing, stubbornly continuing with my river rafting analogy, the natal chart is kind of like, here's the raft you're in, here's the kind of paddle you have, here's you have this is the kind of rafter you are. And but also there's also a little bit of a map of what kind of influences, what kind of river you're going to see ahead. And then the transit's a little bit of a zoom in of, well, definitely up here, it's going to go from a nice smooth river to some higher class rapids. It's going to get a little bit rough in here. And what we know about you is, you have, here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses. So when you go into those rapids, you want to, and I know I'm simplifying things, but you want to play to your strengths, look out for your weaknesses. In other words, so to adapt, knowing yourself, you can adapt better.
Yeah, I love it. I love this analogy.
Cool. Well, yeah. So that's a great segue into the degree of free will that we have. So continuing that. So we have a river. We don't have free will over the river, but we are dealing with ourselves. So we have some, and this is going to be a question. I have some agency over me. I was born with what I'm born with, right? So I have the paddle that I have, and the strengths and weaknesses that I have, right? But what? So yeah, we have the two polarities, the the river, which we can't do anything about, but then we have us in the boat. And what is that relationship? To what degree do we have free will in this scenario?
I mean, you could say you don't have free will over the river, but are you choosing to get into the river? Yes. So we can sort of, I have a tattoo on my arm, actually. It says, avert the danger that has not yet come. It's Hayam Dukam Anagatam in Sanskrit. So in a way, we could say, I'm going to choose not to get into that river because it's too unpredictable. I'm going to avert the danger that could be. But this knowledge is really interesting because it's paradoxical in this way. So not only can we see things like potential health issues we'll have to navigate, relationship issues, which everyone has to go through, career influences in a chart, we also see the amount of free will a person may possess. So there's certain planets in a chart that actually show the magnitude of one's free will. And then the planetary influences can also be changed. This is what we believe in. So to some extent, this is through planetary remedial measures. And everything in a horoscope is predestined and will come to pass. But anything in the horoscope could be changed. And this is where that paradox kind of comes in. So are we predestined to actually experience what we experience, or do we have free will? And this is the answer to that, which is, if you don't know the horoscope, if you don't know how the planets are operating in your chart, if you don't know when they're operating in your chart, if you don't know what to do to fix your chart, then you meet with the destiny that's in that chart over and over again. So in this case, we see people who have the same problems in life, things like multiple marriages, multiple career problems, multiple financial problems, multiple health problems. And nobody has a perfect chart. We're all going to have some amount of weakness or issue we have to overcome. But by knowing the things that are in that chart, we actually can understand where the obstructions have been coming from, and then we can start to make adjustments to improve our lives. So in that way, we have free will because we're going to choose, I call it choose your own adventure. Do you want to experience the same difficulties over and over again, or do you want to take a chance and try something new that you've never done before to hopefully mitigate what we're doing with remedies is mitigating the past life karmic suffering. And then we have smoother sailing. We have more support for marriage, career, relationships, health.
Interesting. So how do you manage and optimize those influences?
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways of doing it. The astral remedies is what they're called. These are the essence of astrology. And the divine science of Vedic astrology has the ability to show us trends in life. They can tell us, or it can tell us in advance whether there will be favorable or unfavorable times, as you mentioned earlier. And the natal chart tells us the periods and the types of suffering that we are likely to face. And those problems in life are caused by weak planets, badly placed planets, afflicted planets. They rule all kinds of various aspects of our lives. And to overcome those problems associated with the planets, that's where we suggest appropriate remedies. They're astrological propitiatory remedies. So in Vedic astrology, the royalty of India were given these remedies at birth. And so when people say, oh, I don't know if I want to get a child reading done, should I look at my child's chart? I always say, yes, absolutely. Because if we have these remedies from birth, we have so much more support in life. And the remedies of systems approach Vedic astrology really do have benefits. So generally people resort to this kind of knowledge at the end of having tried everything else. They don't, in Western culture, we don't know a lot about this knowledge yet. I think it's at the forefront. I think just like yoga has exploded here in the West, I think Ayurveda, we keep seeing all over Instagram. There's all these influencers talking about Ayurvedic diet now. The next thing is going to be Vedic astrology. So the benefit of these remedial measures is better, of course, if it's preventative. Remedial measures are always better than curative measures. Preventative is always better. So luckily with astral remedies, it can be used for both. And based on each person's horoscope, there's a list of favorable planets that can be strengthened, should be strengthened, absolutely. These are the tires on your bus of life. They want to provide the best results in your life. So if you're going down the road with a flat tire, it's not smooth. So we need to put air in that tire. If planets are strong in degrees, if they're well placed, if they're free from affliction, they're not a flat tire. They're able to provide support in that area of your life. But if they're weak or they're badly placed or afflicted by some other influence in the chart, then they can't provide that full support. So we can strengthen safely and effectively by wearing and surrounding ourselves with the vibration of the planet that you're wanting to strengthen. This is done in the two most traditional and effective ways by using proper gemstones for your chart and proper colors for your chart. So one thing is I always see women walking around with diamond engagement rings. It's the one that everybody wants, a diamond ring. Well, there's a lot of women who should not be wearing diamond rings. They represent Venus. And if Venus is not a planet for a certain rising sign that should be strengthened, such as mine, I'm a Pisces rising sign, I rules my 8th house, which is disappointments, setbacks, obstructions, even death-like experiences. It could represent your 6th house of divorce. It could represent your 12th house of losses or separations. Then we do not want to be strengthening that planet. So I wear an emerald engagement ring. It's very good for my relationships. And then also wearing proper colors for your chart. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can buy home decor, clothing, bed sheets, pajamas, sunglasses in colors that support you. And both colors and gemstones really do carry strong vibrational associations with those particular planets. And then similarly, there's also a list of unfavorable planets for each horoscope. Like I was talking about, Venus in my chart is not favorable. I should not strengthen it. So as a rule, we want to avoid strengthening malefic planets that cause adverse effects in our lives. And that's done through, well, instead of strengthening, we want to propitiate, we want to honor, we want to pacify. So this is done through regular practice of spiritual chants. You don't have to do them yourself, but you can listen to spiritual chants for those planets and offer peacemaking charities concerning those planets. So, for example, we can do things like feed the poor and the needy, donate to animal shelters, feed stray animals. You can help parents, your sisters, your brothers, listen to things like Ganesha chants. Ganesha, of course, is the remover of obstacles. So there is a certain set of pacifying remedial measures for each planet. Depending on your chart, you'll do the ones that are best for you. And the feedback on these remedies, of course, it's faith-based. We can't scientifically put a number on how valuable they are, how well they work, but it's astounding to see clients who have really taken them to heart, set aside their ego, they set aside their own personality, and they just try the remedies out for a short amount of time, and they start to notice things improve in their lives. And of course they do. It's, how can your life not improve if you're involved in spirituality and charity to others? But these changes are subtle oftentimes, but over time, they really have proven, the remedies have proven to be effective. And I see it every day in my work. I love it.
You said something I've never heard before or never got before about specifically the malefic influences, which you didn't use that word. I just have heard it so many times. But the planets that aren't helpful, right? The bad karma planets, as you said. I think you said like honoring them. Is that the word you use?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Is that like there's been times where in my life where things have been hard, and there's kind of an intuitive sense for me is like, don't go to battle with that. Like sometimes it feels like it's time to push forward. Sometimes it feels like it's time just to keep my head down.
There's kind of two, I think I get what you're saying. There's two different elements here. One is that by pacifying, by honoring, my dad always says it's like going to the judge and saying, I know I did something wrong. I know I have to pay the consequences, but can I have a lesser sentence? Yeah. So we're asking for forgiveness. We're asking for a little bit less suffering. Just like we see in a lot of religion, it's all kind of faith-based, but there is this other element of, like you said, you're in this bad situation and you don't want to push it even further. You don't want to exacerbate the situation by going against it. And so there is that. K2 is the planet of, it's the northern, Rahu's the northern node of the moon. K2 is the southern node of the moon. K2 asks a person to get on a spiritual path. They go through a 7-year period of K2 most of the time in their lives, depending upon what dasha period they were born into. And K2, 7 years of K2 can be like 7 years in Tibet. It's like the movie with Brad Pitt, where you have just one thing after the other that is forcing you to find a spiritual path. I just went through my 7 years of K2 and it was fabulous. Maybe because I've been doing remedies my entire life. but it doesn't always have to be about suffering, but it is about teaching letting go. So if we can let go of what we want our lives to look like, if we want marriage, if we want a kid right now, if we want money, everybody is obsessed with the hustle culture and money. If we learn to just sit and be content and let go, we have less suffering. If we learn detachment, non-attachment, and wherever Ketu is in your chart, it shows where that past life karmic lesson needs to be resolved. And in that case, it's in my 7th house, which is relationships. So I'm very much of service to my partners in life, to my husband. And it's beautiful. It's not about, oh, I want to put him in this box and make him be a certain way or act a certain way. It's how do I use this challenging aspect of maybe his personality to evolve spiritually. That's kind of along the lines of what your question prompts. Yeah, and then Saturn gets a lot of flack in the spiritual community too, or the astrology community, as being all about moving through tar. It's like hard work, being of service to others. So when someone sees that they have 19 years of Saturn coming up, they tend to be like, oh geez. And Saturn, we know the dreaded Sati Sat is a big thing that's talked about in astrological community. But if we lean into it and we say, I am going to use this 19 years to better myself, to get on a spiritual path, to be of service to others during this time, we have more support, we have less suffering.
Like even the so-called negative influences can be thought of as positive with the right mindset. In other words, they're teaching us something.
Yeah, even periods of really difficult dasha periods or transits can bring about incredible change and incredible evolution, which of course we all know that, we all know people who have been through really tough, tragic situations, and they're stronger for it. That it's not, it sucks they had to go through it, but oftentimes these people have an element of enlightenment that others don't. They have compassion.
That's refreshing here. I think it seems like a lot of people orient, as we do, to everything with control, and so reading a horoscope or something like that, it's oh my, how can I get out of this? How can I wiggle my way through? And what I hear you saying is, well, you can't, but there's a easy way and a hard way. And the easy way is going from the judge pleading guilty, my words, my analogies, pleading guilty, and being open to the lessons so that you learn quicker and easier.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the big Saturn period, and from what I understand, Saturn's good for me. I do well with it, and it doesn't make it not hard, but it's easy for me to appreciate. So my understanding of Saturn, it's kind of like a really tough but fair wrestling coach who pushes you through it, and there's no free handouts, and you get what you earn, and you know it's not that that's not difficult, but I could really appreciate that, and just appreciating that, knowing that about what's going on, like what here's the deal. You signed up for the wrestling team. It's grueling. It's like, well, now that I know that, it's voluntary. And when thinking, like, I've learned from psychology and, exposure therapy, is like when you volunteer for the pain, it's really it changes the whole ball game if it's voluntary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So and then how did the so I have a sapphire. I have a gemstone, and I got it because my dad gave it to me, and it looks good, so I'm all in for that. How how does a gemstone um, strengthen or pacify influences from a planet?
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to that belief that there's a vibrational frequency that's connected with that gemstone. You can dive really deep into how they're connected, how that's possible. But the belief is that we have that vibrational frequency connected with the planet, and then we also have certain clarity and certain size. It matters as well with the astrological gemstones, the Jyotish gemstones. So it's good to have an actual consultation with a gemologist who can go over what gemstones are best for you. Well, you can connect with me to figure out what gemstones are best, and then you can go purchase actual gemstone quality gems.
And so some are harmonic and some are, what's the opposite of a harmonic? Disharmonic?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I was saying with the diamond gemstone, not great for people, for certain rising signs, because it's going to have connection with Venus, strengthening Venus, which is not good for people who have the Libra, which is the mul trachona sign for Venus, in the 6th house of conflicts and divorce or health issues, financial issues. The 8th house of setbacks, delays, disappointments, vulnerability, transformations, even death-like experiences. Or the 12th house, which is losses, expenses, separations, hospitalizations. And there are some astrologers who believe that people should strengthen Rahu or Ketu. And we're of the mindset that nobody should strengthen Rahu or Ketu. Typically, they'll say, oh, you should get a cat's eye or hessonite gemstone. But in my opinion, why would we want to potentially strengthen a planet that also brings worries, fears, phobias, calamities, and past life suffering? We want to pacify so that we only experience the more positive effects, which is Rahu can bring about fame, fortune, ambition, drive, charisma. We saw it in a lot of celebrities' charts. The first house, we've got Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, JFK. But what do all those people also have in common? They all died tragically or young.
What are the main things that your clients ask you about?
I get a lot of questions regarding how to enhance spiritual evolution this lifetime, whether enlightenment is possible. That's seen through K2, for instance, Moksha Karka, significator for enlightenment, potentially in the 12th house, which is the house that signifies enlightenment. I get questions regarding the timing of having children. I actually work with a lot of women who are struggling on fertility and conception journeys. And of course, I also get a lot of clients who are interested in love, when they'll find someone, when they'll get married. Typically, a lot of my male clients are interested in their purpose in life. What is their dharma? What is their point of being on earth? And all of these things can be seen in a chart. This information never ceases to amaze me because we can really dive into any of those areas. Really, a reading can be done regarding anything the client wants to focus on. Information gives a ton of insight into our physical, our spiritual paths, and it's a great tool just for making life decisions or looking at things from a different perspective. Managing the cycles of life, shedding light on why things happen when they happen and why they happen the way they happen. So I always tell clients, I like to share how the planets are truly operating in their lives. I don't like to give sugar-coated false hope. I assume people really want to know the truth about their horoscope. And we all have some weakness. We all have something we have to overcome. So we're going to find that issue, and then we're going to do the remedies for the chart based on that. And then we always look at timing of events, transits. All significant life events are connected with the transits and the main periods and subperiods. So going kind of back to where we were in the beginning of this interview, the birth chart is our foundation. And then from there, we give the remedies for smoother sailing. but the transits are always changing. And they're really important to keep an eye on. And then the planetary main periods and subperiods, they're like the hands on the clock. They give general insights into where our lives are headed any given year. That's the Vimshottari Dasha sequence. And so that's where we can see the past, the present, and the future general trends. And also, as we were mentioning earlier, challenging transits or dasha periods can still bring about really wonderful things in life. So one thing I love doing during consultations for people who are particularly going through rough periods of time is offering that light at the end of the tunnel and ways that they can actually improve their lives right now. So there's kind of like a life coaching element to this astrology practice as well, because we're not just saying, oh, good luck, here's your chart. We're actually saying, oh, there's something you can do about this. You know, you can have way more support and success.
Something I've been thinking about recently is where to live. So will a chart help inform somebody of where they should live?
Yeah, that's called astrocartography. It's really fascinating. I love it. It has proven to be pretty accurate in terms of everybody I've ever looked up, my own chart included. There are certain planetary lines that run through areas of the world. You could look at any continent, and we want to stay away from the planetary lines that are malefic planets in our charts. So if we see that there's a big moon line going through a certain area of the country, we would stay away from that area if moon is a malefic planet. Like for Sagittarius rising signs, for instance, moon rules the 8th house. So they're going to have things like vulnerability, accidents, death-like experiences, disappointments, delays, obstructions, living places that are close to a moon line. So they'd much rather live near something like a Jupiter line, which rules their chart. It would enhance their overall health, appearance, longevity, enterprises, self, all kinds of good stuff. So for me, it's always been really accurate. I've looked at where I grew up, and then I lived in Los Angeles for a while. It was pretty okay there. And then I moved to Sarasota. And I think the line, I have a Jupiter line as a Pisces rising sign. Jupiter is really good for my career and professional life. And that was running through Fairfield and down past Sarasota. So my experiences here in Sarasota have been very similar to where I grew up. There's a nice spiritual element. There's family support. There's career support.
Well, that's super fun. Figuring out what influences you would have where, because you pair that up with places that you like, and yeah, super cool. And then, you were saying one of your specialties is working with conception, and you're 6 months along.
I am
at the moment. Yeah. And so, did you apply that to yourself?
I should have, because when I looked forward to when the baby's due, not great transits. It would have been a great idea to try to navigate the best chart for the child, but that's not, we don't want to play God. We're just we got to let some things be. And she will, of course, have her remedies from birth. So hopefully she'll be fine. But
well, she'll have you as a mother, so I'm sure she'll be fine.
Oh, thanks. But luckily, I mean, and this is something I've always kind of struggled with, helping women in this. I feel a lot of compassion for them. I personally have not struggled with this. Once my husband and I decided we wanted a child, it was all very one thing after the other, like straightforward, easy. But now that I have experienced as far along into my pregnancy as I have, I've definitely gained a lot more compassion in terms of like women who have lost babies, even in the first trimester, I think there's a lot of stigma around, telling our friends and family when we've conceived, not just waiting until you're in that second trimester, the safer zone. And it would be devastating. I never realized how devastating it would be even to lose a child that early on, 8 week even, because there's so much wrapped up. Like the second you conceive, you are a mother. Everything is changing. Your body's changing. Your mind is changing. You're preparing for life to come in, and that's something I could have never grasped until I actually became pregnant. So I'm excited for this journey. I'm excited to be able to help women more and more who are struggling. I'm in the developmental phase of really about to launch a new project called Dharmic Baby with a good client and friend of mine, Wendy Kawasaki. She's a registered nurse and Ayurvedic practitioner based in Los Angeles. And over the years, Wendy and I have individually helped a handful of women conceive children after years of failed attempts, even round after round of IVF treatment that didn't work. And now we've just packaged those individual services into one online private conception counseling service. And we're using Vedic astrology, we're using Ayurveda, and there's various astrological and Ayurvedic techniques that can be used in terms of helping women who are struggling. I was so excited for my Leo clients because the last 2 years have been really tough in terms of their relationships. We had all kinds of issues and with conception. So we're seeing, just sometimes waiting for these planets and these transits to move along is all it takes. And there's women who are just, I'm on year 2 of trying, nothing's working. And on some levels, it might be hard for them to hear, hey, why don't you wait just a couple more months until this transit moves along? Because they're raring to go. They want to try every chance they can. But I've had so much success just timing IVF implantation, particularly with the transit of the planets. And then, of course, doing things like the remedies to strengthen fertility in the chart or strengthen the influences that indicate there could be some suffering on account of children or health issues for children. So, and then Wendy does things like Ayurvedic health consultation, healing breath work, energy healing, and meditation instruction, because so much of this is wrapped up in a spiritual element. Some women are not entirely ready yet on that spiritual level they have too much grief or too much healing they still need to work through in order to really support a healthy pregnancy. So there's so much that can be done to help support using these kinds of techniques, essentially.
When I first heard about that, I was like, oh, it's just a timing thing. Like wait for the window for where you're most fertile. But actually, there's much more to it than that. What you're doing is actually helping prepare the mother in a spiritual, emotional, karmic way to prepare them for motherhood.
Right, which is not something I've seen a lot of people doing quite yet.
Yeah, no, that's very cool.
Yeah, with the Western medicine, it's like they'll oftentimes it's really interesting. The women I've worked with, their doctors will, unbeknownst to this knowledge at any amount, they'll just end up saying something that I would have said. Like they'll say, well, your cervix isn't ready yet. Your cycle's not here yet. Like we have to wait until this happens. And I'm like always shocked because I'm like, that's exactly what I'm seeing in the chart. So it's kind of using that knowledge, pairing it with ancient knowledge, and then also, yeah, the spiritual element too.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. So the doctors, right? It's like all hardware, and you're doing some more software.
Yep, I love that. Your analogies are great.
How can people find you, like on social media or email or website? How can they learn more? How can they contact you?
My website is planetarysara.com, and my Instagram is planetary_Sara. Um, those are the things that I'm most active on. And then the email is sarah@planetarysara.com. Anybody who reaches out to me will receive a free remedial measures report. So they'll get to know all the planets that are best for their chart, and what gemstones are good for them, what colors are good for them, and then the charities and chants that they can do as well.
Killer. Oh, I like that. Sounds like a good deal. So awesome. Thank you very much. Anything
Thank
else we
you.
missed?
I don't think so. Not that I can think of.
Cool.